Welcome back to our special, Who is Gavin Newsom? So we've been talking about him the last few segments. Let's turn the corner here a little bit, because California, once Gavin leaves, sayonara, thank goodness, we've got to get a new governor in this state. And I don't want to give up on California. I don't want to lose California. California is an amazing conservative history and tradition, and I want to get it back. And Steve Hilton is one of those men who wants to get it back as well. He is one of the Republican candidates for governor of California. Steve Hilton, how are you, sir?
I'm very well. Great to be with you.
Good to talk to you. What are the chances of a Republican winning this state ever again?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, I'm planning to make that happen. I've always said it's going to be very difficult, but it is not impossible. And for too long, I think, Republicans in California have been demoralized. They've bought this argument that this is such a deep blue state, as the saying goes. Republicans can't win. That is just not true. The tide is turning in California. Last year in the elections, President Trump did better in California than any Republican presidential nominee for a generation. 10 counties flipped from blue to red. And if you look at the polls, there's a majority for change in California. 60% also say the state is headed in the wrong direction. Now, you may ask, who are the 40% who think it's going in the right direction? But I'll take 60% as a vote for change. So I think what we got to put together is a very clear argument about why this corrupt elite of Democrats who've been in power for so long, 15 years now of one-party rule, why they've made such a mess of it with their combination of ideological extremism and complete uselessness and incompetence, but also to put forward a positive, practical, common sense plan for how we can make life better for Californians. That's why I'm out there arguing for $3 gas instead of the $5, $6 heading higher that we have at the moment, for ending the war on single family homes so we can restore that California dream of home ownership, for ending the ridiculous war on business, in particular small business, with the ridiculous nanny state bloated bureaucracy that they've built over the years, the climate extremism, all these things that are just ideological, insane, making everything in California so expensive, making it impossible to do anything. Lower costs, less hassle, restoring the California dream. I think that is a message that people are going to vote for next year.
You mentioned the word demoralized. I've been thinking a lot about this recently with Trump's crime crackdown in DC and a couple other issues, about how people may not even realize anymore what it is like to live in a place where you don't have to worry about being carjacked. And like, you don't have to step over homeless people, and we can take care of people. And it's not a disgusting, graffiti everywhere. But how do you get people to wake up to see what's possible?
I love the way you put that. I mean, that's part of my campaign, and that's why I'm all over the state, so energetically out there. Even this early stage, a lot of people say they haven't seen anything like this from a Republican candidate for as long as they can remember. But that's my whole point. I use this phrase the whole time. It doesn't have to be like this. We don't have to put up with this. Other places aren't like this. Other places don't have this squalor and chaos and crime on the streets, exactly as you say. I mean, yesterday I was out in Oakland in the Bay Area, and we'll be putting out the video later today. The scenes, I mean, you've got Gavin Newsom running around, lecturing everyone about democracy and making jokes and trolling President Trump on social media and all the rest of it. Meanwhile, his state, I mean, using the term third world conditions to describe what I saw yesterday and I've filmed, is an insult to the third world. Other places aren't like this. You just need to do common sense, practical things. Enforce the law, clean it up, do things properly, focus on results, not endless talk and ideology. And I think that is the message we got to get out there. We don't have to put up with this. Other places aren't like this. California can become, in the words of my campaign, golden again.
Yeah, look at you can see the video we're playing right now. I'm sure yours is even worse. I've seen worse than that. I've walked through worse than that. California, okay, so I have a national radio show, and there's a lot of people all across the country who are like, California, whatever, lost cause, who cares? Throw it off into the ocean, it doesn't matter. And I always want to make this argument like, no, like California has an incredible conservative tradition, like Reagan, Nixon, the Hoover Institute, Breitbart News more recently. Like, there's all these conservative, like this, and they're the cultural center of this country. Help other people understand, I don't mean that rudely, let me word it the other way. Why is California matter? Why is
Yeah,
California
well, I
important to
mean,
the United States?
it's a great question. And first of all, let's look at it from what, if you know, just kind of in terms of self-protection, right? If you live somewhere outside of California, remember that in the last decade or so, when we've had this extremist, elitist, corrupt one-party rule in California, the machine of Pelosi and Newsom that threw up Kamala Harris, Karen Bass, all these useless people, the ideology that they've incubated here has spread out and infected the rest of the country. Sometimes I use the term that they've turned California into the Wuhan lab of far left extremism. They've been cooking up this ideological virus. So you look at the things that have caused such mayhem around the country, whether that's the Green New Deal, what they're doing on elections like ballot harvesting, the woke nonsense, the gender ideology and extremism,
Yes.
equity, reparations, on and on. All of these things started in California. So if we beat them here, we do a great service for the whole of the rest of the country. But there's a more positive way of putting it as well, which is we are the largest state, by far the biggest economy, with the fourth biggest economy in the world in California today, even with all this nonsense that we have to put up with. If we just set California free, get rid of these ridiculous taxes and regulations that give us the worst business climate in the country, highest unemployment rate, highest poverty rate, if we get rid of all the nonsense that's caused that, we could really power ahead, make more money for Californians and for America, and really lead not just our state here, but the whole country in a positive way. So we're actually exporting positive things from California to the rest of the country instead of what we have
Like we
now.
used to. Yeah, okay. I love the vision, obviously. Let's talk some brass tacks, Steve, all right? So when I was in San Diego, there were two moments when I was pretty demoralized. One was during the COVID recall election of Newsom. And Newsom won the recall.
Yeah.
Like we thought this was it. And then I was very demoralized with the LA mayor's race with Caruso losing. You're like, all right,
Yeah.
here's a business guy who gets it. You're like, you guys went with what? Who? You did what? So like when you have these moments of hope and they just get crushed and by a lot, that can be demoralizing. What's different now and how can you do it differently this go around?
Well, I think that I can't speak to those races and those candidates and so on. The recall. I mean, Larry Elder did as a friend of mine, did a great job as far as he could, but it was very late in the day. By the time that all got on the back, he didn't have a lot of time to put together the kind of campaign, to raise the kind of money, all the things you need to do to beat the Democrat machine. You've got a really corrupt, massive Democrat industrial complex in California. The government unions that take taxpayer money and then funnel it to their politicians. The whole machine that they've built here is very powerful, and you need to really understand that and take it on. That's why I'm starting so energetically so earlier. We're raising money. I'm out there fighting. I don't think they've faced a candidate like me before. The combination that I have of business experience, I've started and run companies on both sides of the Atlantic, government experience. I was senior advisor in the UK government, and really one of the main areas that I focused on there was fighting the bureaucracy and taking on the established interests in the government and also the media platform. And so I've got a combination that they haven't faced before, and I'm really, really certain that they're going to get a shock next year. Another thing, very important practical thing that's happening, we are cleaning up the voter rolls in California. A huge thing has happened that not people aren't paying attention to just in the last year or so, especially thanks to the work of a young man called Shiloh Marks, who I'm working with. Over 2 million ineligible inactive voters have been kicked off the voter rolls in California. That's a huge change. And if you think about what they're doing with mass mail-in voting, sending ballots out to everyone, cleaning up the voter rolls is a big thing to have happened, and that's going to affect our elections here next year. So I think the ingredients are there for real change. As I say, California revolution coming next year. As I say, I'm not taking anything for granted. It's going to be very, very difficult, but we can do this. I'm very convinced of that.
How can people support your campaign? What do you need?
Thank you very much. Well, more than anything, we need money to beat these unions and so on. So anything anyone can spare, very welcome. It's stevehiltonforgovernor.com. I'd appreciate anybody's support. And if you're here in California, just join our campaign and our movement. We need volunteers, people who go out and spread the word. stevehiltonforgovernor.com.
We'll do it. Let's talk often, Mr. Hilton. Appreciate you.
Thanks very much. Great to be with you.
Thank you, sir. To go back to what we talked about in the first segment with the bench of the Democratic Party, the bench in California is not what it was either. The two frontrunners are Toni Atkins, who's a San Diego state senator. She used to run a Planned Parenthood. And then Javier Becerra, who has some national acclaim. He was the head of HHS for a while and Attorney General of California. But they're not compelling people at all. So that's not great for the Democratic Party. But does it matter when you have a massive machine like that? I just wish, I know I mentioned COVID a second ago. I wish the people of California would remember COVID and how awful of a time that was and how wrong the experts were. And depending on how graceful you want to be, how either immature and easily deceived our leaders were, or how just totalitarian and brutal their instincts were during that time. Enough with the wildly ambitious people like the Newsoms. Hopefully Trump is showing the people of California what's possible, what lower prices are like, what lower taxes feels like, what a better quality of life is. You don't need your cities to be taken over by illegals and illegals filling up your hospitals and your schools. We can be just like what the people of California voted for in 1994. 58% of them did for numbers escape me, right? 87, I believe it was, where they kicked out all the illegals. They would have kicked out all the illegals. It passed 58%. Then it went to the courts and it never got enforced. It was called the Save Our State Initiative. Save our state. We've got to do it for the good of the country. And just to end with a scripture here, I think of 1 Samuel 16:7. It says, "Do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him. The Lord does not see as man sees." Man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. I pray that people don't get fooled by the smooth talking and the slick hairedness of Gavin Newsom on a national level, and also not fooled by the lies of a party machine in California. But let's look at people's hearts. Let's look at what is good and true. Politics by Faith is my podcast. Please join us over there. First TV, spread the word.